the three mental operations, these are the acts of the mind according to Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas. They say that when we think, and that is the main function of the mind, to think, as we have discussed in critical thinking. When we think, there are three mental operations or acts of the intellect. So the first one is simple apprehension, the second is judgment, and the third is reasoning. So these are the three mental operations or acts of the mind when we think. So we're going to discuss these three mental operations. And the first mental operation is simple apprehension. Okay? So let's proceed. The first act of the intellect, and by intellect we mean the mind, is simple apprehension. The act by which the mind or the intellect knows the essence or nature of the thing. Now, let me explain first what we mean by essence or nature of the thing. When we say nature or essence of a thing, it means what a thing, an object really is. So, for example, I'm holding this mouse. Uh, that means when I know, I understand the essence of what a mouse is. So, essence simply means what an object or thing or place or anything is. Okay? So we have already explained how we know. So for example, if we know this mouse has its own nature, meaning what the mouse really is. Okay, or let's consider, for example, the ball pen. So the ball pen has its own nature. It has its own essence. The ball pen has its own what it is. Now, when we know a ball pen, we are forming a representation or image of the ball pen. And we already discussed how we do that in the previous discussion. We form a copy based on our perception of the ball pen. So when we think of the ball pen, based on our perception, the ball pen will have its color. This is red. Of course, silver. It will have its parts. It will have the ballpoint. We use this for writing. And of course, when you try to use it to write, then we will see that there is an ink. Okay? So when we form, in the first act, in simple apprehension, when we form an image or copy of the ball pen, we are forming an representation of the ball pen. In this case, this is just an example of the ball pen in our mind. So the real ball pen and the copy of the ball pen in our mind are two different things. Of course, the real essence or the real nature of the ball pen will be different from what is in our mind. Because what is in our mind is dependent on our perception. Okay? It dependent on our perception. Now, so how do we form the mental image? We discussed last time about abstraction. So in abstraction, what we do is we remove the non-essential, like the color, because any color will do, like the brand, okay? This is universal, so big or Parker or any kind of brand will do. For as long as this object is an instrument for writing, it has a ballpoint, and it uses ink. Okay, so that's how we form the idea, as we have said before, without affirming or denying anything about it. Meaning, we are not saying whether this is a ball pen is a good ball pen, or this is an expensive ball pen, or this is a nice ball pen, or this is a useless ball pen. We are not saying that. We are just after what the ball pen is in its nature. Okay? So, apprehension as the first mental operation is the beginning of knowledge. We need to understand first what an object is. So that's the beginning, the foundation of knowledge. Before we can go up to the more complex type of knowledge, like for example, reasoning, when we make plans, when we make uh, decisions, designs, etc., etc. Because all of these, they start from the basic. And what is the basic? Just forming an idea. Okay. So we have already defined what we mean by knowledge. It's the possession of the intentional form, meaning by the intentional form, it is the image or copy or representation of any object that we know in our mind, okay, or in our intellect. So, as we have said, there are two kinds of cognitive faculties. There are the senses and the intellect. All knowledge start, rational knowledge, we mean, start from the senses. Because, again, we cannot have the idea of ball pen unless we see its qualities, its properties, okay? Or unless we read, or unless we listen, or unless we touch, okay, or we hear. So we will never know the idea about uh, sounds, music, noise, whatever, unless we have the sense of sound. Or we will never know the concept of this, what is sweet, what is sour, what is bitter, what is spicy, whatever, or salty, unless we have this sense of taste. So for Aristotle and Aquinas, all knowledge starts from the senses. Okay? There is nothing in the mind or in the intellect that did not pass through our senses. And I have explained last time about ideogenesis, if you still remember. So the senses, you have the external sense, and then external sense performs perception. The result is a percept. And then in the internal senses, you have sensation or imagination, phantasm. So percept and phantasm are representations or images or copies. But they differ because the percept is the image while the object is present our senses. So while I'm looking at this ball pen or when I'm looking at somebody, you have a percept. When that something or somebody is already out of your senses, you are no longer looking at it, you are no longer listening to it, you are no longer tasting it, etc. Then there is an image that remains in your sense or in your imagination, and that image is called the phantasm. So that's what you remember, that's what you imagine. You don't imagine the percept because the percept is the image while the object is still there. But when the object is no longer there, something remains in your imagination or in your memory, that is the phantasm. But remember that phantasm is based on the physical qualities of the object. Meaning, we imagine the colors, we imagine the shape, we imagine the taste, we imagine the sound, etc., etc. Okay? And then, of course, you have the intellect. There are two aspects, the active and the passive. It's the active that performs the abstraction. So, meaning there's only one intellect. But in its active aspect, it performs abstraction. The result is the abstracted nature. And then the second aspect, the second part, is the passive, which performs the process of conception, meaning it now forms all the images or all the properties into one universal image that is the concept or the idea. So we have already discussed this abstraction. I will just uh, skip that. Now, so when we say simple apprehension, it means basic knowledge, having a simple understanding of a particular object like a ball pen or a mouse or a cell phone or headphone or laptop or a particular person, etc. Now, the degree of our knowledge will depend on the degree of our understanding. So, if you attain the highest form of knowledge, for example, when you are already as professionals, like you make a design, you make a plan, you make a program. So those are more complex forms of knowledge, but they will always depend on the basic, on the degree of our understanding. So if we understood the basic concepts, they become the stepping stone towards attaining higher types or higher degrees of knowledge. So we have to understand the basic. Our understanding, of course, will depend on our perception. See, so how you perceive a particular object, particular situation, particular thing, whatever, they will be the basis of our understanding. And then, of course, our knowledge will depend on our understanding. So ultimately, our knowledge will always depend on how we perceive things. The perception is very important. Now, let's go to the ADR concept because that's the product of simple apprehension. Okay, so it's a mental image or intellectual image or representation or copy of the object. By object, we mean any object. It could be a place, it could be anything that we can know. Place, situation, condition, event, material objects, concrete objects, animals, living, non-living, anything that we know. Okay, so it represents the object or the thing in our mind, and there are several characteristics of a concept or idea. So concept idea, they're the same. One, an idea is universal. Universal in the sense that it is applicable to all objects that fall under its comprehension. By comprehension, by our own understanding. So for example, how do we understand a ball pen? So let us say we understand a ball pen to be a writing instrument with ink and ballpoint. That idea of ball pen will apply to all ball pens. That's why it's universal. What is our idea of a school? If our idea of a school is a learning institution, then that idea of a learning institution and school as a learning institution applies to all schools. If our idea of a friend is a person who is close to us and can be trusted, then that idea of a friend applies to all people we consider to be friends. So that's the meaning of the idea is universal. Second, that the idea is spiritual and intellectual. By spiritual here doesn't mean that it is a spirit like our spirit. Spiritual in the sense that it is not something that is material. It is intellectual, meaning it exists in the mind. So spiritual here does not mean that it is a spirit like our spirit. It simply means that it is not a material, meaning it's an intellectual some concept. Then it is constant. By constant, I mean that we cannot change our idea. So, for example, our idea of a ball pen will always remain. Okay, because once we have changed our idea of a ball pen, let's say it does not have a ballpoint, so we change the ballpoint into something. Now, if we change that into something, then it will no longer be the idea of a ballpen. It will be the idea of something else. Okay? So that's the meaning of constant. Uh, it doesn't mean that it cannot change. It can change, but once we change it, it will no longer be the same idea. Okay. So again, example: ball pen, writing instrument with ballpoint and ink. So that idea of ball pen as a writing instrument with ballpoint and ink is universal. It is intellectual and it is constant. Now, what is the term? The term is an expression of our concept. Our concept or idea exists in the mind, but we need to express them. We need to articulate. We need to say. We need to write them. And once we use a particular combination of words or a symbol or sign to express what is in our mind, it becomes a term. So the term is an expression, could either be a written or spoken, it becomes a term. So I have an idea here of a person who is a woman and has a child. So that's my idea of a mother. Then I use the term mother. So the term mother, the word mother becomes a term. It becomes an external expression of what I have in my mind. So term and concepts may be the same, but they are also different in the sense that we have a universal concept, but when we use a word to express our concept, we're going to use different terms. Okay? We're going to use different terms because it is a basic unit of language. For example, okay? Universal idea, different terms, but expressed in different language. For example, these terms, these are words, right? Man, tao, homo, hombre, red. They manifest only one concept, man. But since we are using different terms, or we're using different languages, then you have different words. Okay? Here, another example. One, isa, uno, each. Universal concept, one. But since we use a language, then there will be different terms. But they all express the same concept. Okay? So that's the meaning of term. We use different languages to express our concepts. We use different terms or words to express our concepts. And our concepts, our ideas are so vast that sometimes our language, our words, our terms cannot fully express our ideas. Because ideas, as we have discussed, are copies of reality. We cannot copy everything. We cannot copy the whole of reality because it means knowing everything. But we can sometimes we cannot have a complete list of terms to express our concepts. That's why we invent words, we invent terminologies. That's how language expand by adding more, more terms. Before we only have this word. So I don't know if you can see my. Let's check if you can see my background because I have actually prepared at my back. I don't know if you can. Yeah, you can see my background. I have a board here. Can you see this? Can you see my board, class? May I have a feedback if you can see my board? Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Good. So this is that's byte, right? I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? Byte. Can you
Yes,
see?
Yes.
sir.
Yeah.
Yes
Now
po.
we have this term, right? It's a different term, different concept. But you see, because byte is a measure, well, we are inventing many terms. Because our language sometimes we have to invent new words so that we can express what we have in our mind. So byte and then MP, gigabytes, terabytes. So see how our language develop because we need to invent new words, be able for us to express those different concepts. And you can think of many other concepts or words. Okay, especially now, millennials, they are very, very good in inventing words. Okay, sometimes the old people like me can no longer follow the new words that they invent, and then these words find their way in the dictionary. They become part of our lang- uh, normal language or common language. So although concepts remain the same and are common to all, the terms that are used to express them will vary depending on the language that we use. Now, so we define in logic, we define term as the conventional sign that express our idea or concept. So a term is basically a sign. And what is a sign? It represents something other than itself. Okay. So like for example, a flag is a sign. So a white piece of cloth, aside from being just a white piece of cloth, it actually means if you raise that white flag, it means surrender. So it's a sign of surrender. So words are like that. Aside from being combinations of letters, like for example, uh, This combination of letters, let me just write here. So if you see this combination of letters and numbers, you see that? What is that?
What is that? Water.
Water. You see, this is a sign. This is a symbol. Aside from a combination of, H2O, it means something else. That's the meaning of term. It's a sign. But not just a sign, it is a conventional sign. And by we mean when we say conventional, it means that the connection between the sign and the object that it signifies, like for example in this case, this is water, H2O is water. The connection between H2O and water is based on agreement or practice. Okay, agreement or practice because when the scientists discovered, for example, hydrogen, they named it hydrogen. So they use the H as a symbol of hydrogen. And hydrogen, in fact, is also a conventional sign. Okay? And the symbolism of hydrogen with H is a convention. It's based on agreement of scientists. Okay? And then, of course, O would be oxygen. So they discovered this element in reality, in the physical real in universe, and they name it oxygen. So even the word oxygen is a conventional sign. They agreed, well, let's use oxygen. They could have used another term, right? Okay, so now, uh, what is another element that starts with O? I don't know if there is another element that starts with O, but if there is an element that starts with O, they can no longer use the word O because O is now used to signify oxygen. They have to use another term. I don't know what is this. Is this gold or silver? AG. What is AG? Anyone? Gold or silver? AU yata ang gold, no? Not sure. Sino bang science sa atin? Sa inyo?
Silvers or AG.
AG and silver. Okay. So you see, AG silver, but instead of using S, hindi. Because the point is, it's based on agreement. We can no longer use S, maybe, or because silver AG, I don't know if something Latin or Greek, but they can no longer use the word S, or they can no longer use the word O to signify other elements because they've already used that to symbolize oxygen. So that's the meaning of agreement. Okay, like for example, uh, conventional that when you see a red light, you stop. There's no natural connection between the red and stopping. But it's based on agreement. That's based on convention. See the red light, you stop. You see the green light, you go. If you don't understand the convention, the connection, you will not be able to follow the signs, right? A man, a person who just comes down from the mountain, haven't seen all these traffic lights, when he sees the red light, he will never stop. He will just go because he does not understand the convention. Right? So language, the grammar, the rules of grammar that govern the composition of language, is all based on agreement. Okay. So red light means stop. A white flag means peace or surrender. This one is plus or addition, or it can actually be affirmative or a cross. So different meanings of sign. It depends on how going to interpret those signs, and that's the nature of the word. Can you imagine? This does not look an animal, right? If I put these letters here, like I combine all these HORSE. It doesn't look like an animal, but this combination of letters HORSE stands for particular kind of animal, a horse. Now, let's go to the properties of the idea or concepts. And there are two, comprehension and extension. So when you say comprehension, It means the sum total of the attributes or thoughts elements which constitute our idea. So think of any idea or think of any object, and your idea of that object will be composed of the different attributes. We call it thought elements because it's in the mind, no? Of that comprise this idea. So it means the meaning, the signification, the thought content, or the connotation of the idea, the connotation of the idea. So example, how do we understand a ball pen? So when we understand a ball pen, we're going to come up with thought contents. These are actually the essential elements: instrument, ink, writing, ballpoint. Okay, so that's our comprehension. Like another thing, triangle. So how do we understand or comprehend triangle? We will have to come up with certain thought elements that we think are important to the concept of a triangle. Polygon, three sides, and three angles. So what is a triangle? What is our comprehension of a triangle? It is a polygon with three sides and three angles. Okay? So that's the meaning of a comprehension. So think of anything, when you think of its excuse me, definition, that would be the comprehension of the thing. Uh, what would be a bank? So a bank could be, it has something to do with finances, right? And institution. So a bank is an institution. So financial institution. So financial and institution are top elements that comprise our understanding of a bank. Excuse me. So think of any object that we know. We try to come up a concept of. There will always be their thought contents. So the thought contents would be all the all the essential elements that we can think of a particular object. Okay. Uh, a cell phone, for example. What is a cell phone? This is a gadget that we use for communication or for information or for taking pictures or for storing data. So that would be the comprehension of a cell phone. But again, since comprehension is based on our understanding, and our understanding is based on our perception, then our conception of a particular thing, our comprehension of a particular thing, will depend on how we perceive this. And I perceive this as a gadget that we use for communication, for storing data, for taking pictures, etc., etc. So that's our comprehension. Now, the second is extension. It's a sum total of all the individuals or things or beings or groups to which a particular idea can be applied. It expresses the denotation or the application of the idea to different individuals. So when we say extension, we are not thinking of thought elements, but examples. Okay, examples of this idea. Okay, so this is our comprehension of a ball pen, and this is our comprehension of a triangle. The extension would be the examples. It could be the brand, it could be the kinds of that particular object. So, for example, ball pen can be applied to these brands: Parker, Pilot, Bic, Uni, Zebra. That shows my age, no? Because these are the brands of ball pens during my time. I don't know if there are still these brands of ball pen. Okay, so when we think of a triangle, so this polygon tri-sides triangles is a comprehension of a triangle. The extension will be the kinds of triangles: isosceles right triangle, equilateral triangle, scalene triangle, etc. No? So this is the extension part, meaning the application, and then comprehension would be the definition. Okay? You understand? Please give me a feedback if you understand that distinction. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes po.
Okay.
Clear po.
Okay. Clear. Clear. Good. So when again I used a while ago bank. So the comprehension of the bank would be the definition of the bank as a financial institution. Now, when we say development bank, savings bank, mortgage bank, or the major banks like PNB, PDO, Security Bank, Metro Bank, Allied, BPI, etc., etc. They would be the extension of a bank. Newspaper. What is a newspaper? Newspaper is a daily reading material that contains news, information, advertisements, etc., or not published daily or weekly. Then when you think of the kinds of newspaper like Philippine Star, uh, what else? Um, uh, Inquirer, Bulletin, etc. These are the extension of newspapers. Okay, so let's move now to the next. There is an inverse relation between comprehension and extension. As the comprehension of an idea increases, its extension decreases and vice versa. So, what do you mean by increasing the comprehension? When we increase the comprehension, we are adding more thought elements to our understanding of the idea. And when we do this, the application will decrease. Why? Because when we put more thought elements, more features, more qualities, then the idea becomes more precise. It becomes narrow. It becomes, more strict. Okay, and when the so by increasing this, as I've said, specific, it becomes definite. It is a more precise definition. By increasing the comprehension, the term becomes broad and general in application. Okay, meaning if we try to increase the application, we will have to remove some of the thought elements. Let's have an example. So again, greater comprehension, less extension, the term becomes more specific and definite, becomes more precise. But when we say greater extension, it has lesser comprehension. That means the term becomes more general, it becomes broad, it has a loose meaning. So for example, bank and PNB. PNB would have a more precise, it's more precise because it's a specific type of bank. So PNB here will be more specific. It will have greater comprehension. Bank will have lesser comprehension. But this bank will have greater extension because the bank will apply to more banks, not just PNB. But if you try to define PNB comprehension, it will include the idea of a bank. So you go to say PNB is a bank. Another example, worker. Worker and professional. Worker would be greater extension, meaning it will be broader than professional. Because a professional is a kind of a worker. So the professional is more precise, more definite compared to the term worker. Another example, computer or electronic device. The computer is more precise, meaning it has greater comprehension as compared to an electronic device. Electronic device is broad, meaning it has greater extension because when you try to give an example of an electronic device, part of that extension would be the computer. But if you give the comprehension of the computer, part of its definition or comprehension would be electronic device. The comprehension means more precise, more specific.
Telephone po.
Telephone, very
Yeah,
good,
telephone.
telephone. Ah, and means of communication will have greater extension because it's broader, and part of its extension would actually be a telephone. Okay, so I think you get that. Let's have one more or two more example. Let's take the first one. Greater comprehension. Greater
Nurse.
Nurse po.
correct. The next theory, relativity, greater extension.
Rel-
Theory.
Greater extension would be
Theory.
theory because relativity is a theory. Okay, so I think that's clear. You have calamity, typhoon, greater extension would be answer. Greater extension is yes, calamity. Kasi typhoon is a kind of calamity. Okay? So, comprehension and extension affect the way we use words or concepts. In research, where terms are strictly defined, because you cannot just, when you write your paper, it cannot be a very general, very broad, paper. It has to be specific. So the terms must be strictly defined. Okay? Which means they must have a precise definition. Then they have greater or higher comprehension. Therefore, their extension or application is limited. Is limited only to the context of the discipline or discourse where the terms are used. For example, if you are in psychology if you are a psychometrician, certain terms when you write a thesis or term paper, the terms that you use there will only have application within your discipline. So it will be limited to that discipline. If you are in the legal profession, then the terms will have legal definition. Then it's very, you know, it's very strictly defined. But of course, if you are outside of the academe, you're not doing research, we're just talking, then the terms can be very loose. For example, you say money. Money is very loose. I mean, but or for example, wealth. Wealth could be very loose, very general. But when you consider now wealth in terms of business or, for example, in commerce, then it has a more specific definition. Based on this, we define or we classify terms according to two things, based on its significance or comprehension or meaning, and based on its extension or application. And there are four types of terms based on significance or meaning or comprehension. First one is univocal. So, what is a univocal term? A term that is used in an identical sense, meaning it expresses only one meaning when applied to several objects. For example, or when the term has no other possible meanings than itself. For example, scientific or technical terms, like, oh, I already erased the H2O, okay, or sodium chloride, or cardiac arrest, Homo sapiens, okay, or the DNA, the deoxyribonucleic acid. These are specific terms. They are univocal because when you use those terms, they don't have any other meaning except their own one meaning. Okay, so you Homo sapiens will always be man. So let's take the example of some words. Mercury. The word mercury, if you don't define mercury, will not be univocal. Why? Because it can have other meanings. It could be a name of a planet. It could be an element. It could be a drugstore. Or it can even be a person, a singer. Those of you who are familiar with Queen, Mercury is Freddie Mercury, right? So Mercury has many meanings. Okay, so we have to use Mercury. Like for example, uh, I went to Mercury to buy some medicines. If you use Mercury in that sentence, then it becomes univocal because that means it is a drugstore. You don't buy medicine in the planet Mercury, or you don't buy a medicine in an element named Mercury. You buy medicine in a drugstore named Mercury. Apple. Apple is not univocal if we don't use it in a particular sense because it could be a fruit, it could be a person, or it could be a brand. Okay. Now, when we use these terms, then they become or they have a clear meaning, which is univocal. So, go to Mercury and buy some medicines. Apple is a healthy fruit. So, when you say apple is healthy fruit, it means it's a fruit. It's not a person or a gadget. So, in that sentence, those terms are univocal. So, here are some more examples. Terms used here are they have very clear meaning. So, for example, water is a combination of two atoms of hydrogen in an atom of oxygen. So, water becomes univocal because there is a definition. Okay, you defined it. So, there's no other meaning except the one that you have given. Mercury, when it is defined as the planet that is closest to the sun, becomes univocal because it is defined. Okay? Now, the terms that are used are taken to signify one meaning in two instances. So you use the term twice in a sentence, but they have only one meaning. For example, water is heavier than air, and air is fresh. So I use the word air here twice, and they mean one and the same thing. So the term air is univocal. Okay. So a univocal expresses its literal or original meaning. Okay. So, for example, the underlined terms here are used univocally. The sun rises from the east. So there's no other object or no, the term sun does not pertain to any object that rises from the east except the sun itself. So it's a univocal term. It has only one meaning. The fathers concelebrated in the Mass. So what is why these fathers are concelebrated in the Mass? These are priests. Okay? So they are not just any kind of father because not all fathers except the priests celebrate the Mass. Some minor subjects are prerequisites to other major subjects. So I use the word subject twice here, but they mean one and the same thing. So they are used univocally. Okay? Clear? Some feedback? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Hmm. Okay. So let's move now to the second equivocal term. So the equivocal term is a term that expresses two or more different or unrelated meanings. They may have the same spelling, the same pronunciation, but they differ in meaning. Example, watch. So, watch can mean timepiece or watch to see. So you see the same spelling but different meanings. Watch a timepiece and watch to see. March. March, like a walk, cadence walk, or march the third month of the year, March. Club. Club could be, a piece of wood, or a club, an association, or a place. Okay, club. Apple, I've already mentioned, could be a brand, it could be a person, or it could be a fruit. So if you just use these terms like this without using these terms in a sentence, you will never know what is its meaning, because the meaning could be different. So the example, the term food. So when I don't define the term food, it is equivocal because it could be the lower part of our body or a unit of measurement. Foot, like 12 inches. Okay. So when used in a sentence with a definite sense, then this term becomes univocal because you already use them in a sentence with definite meaning. So for example, so you're stepping on my foot. Step on my foot. Foot means the lower part of the body. My daughter, Apple, loves to eat apples. So the first apple refers to a person, and the second apple refers to a fruit. So the two are equivocal. Okay? But here, fruit is univocal. Okay? Now, here, the sentence of the judge was not clear. Even if you use the word sentence in this sentence, it is still not clear. Why? Because the way it is formulated, the term sentence in this sentence could be understood in two ways. It could mean a statement of the judge, or the verdict of the judge. So in this case, sentence is equivocal. Why? Because there are two possible different meanings. Here, the man keeps on watching at his watch. So these two are equivocal because watching here means to see, while watch here means a timepiece. So the two are equivocal. Okay? The coach of the team wrote on our coach. Coach of the team, meaning the mentor, and coach in the second instance is a courage. Okay, so it's a courage. So the two are equivocal. Now, let's go to the third, the analogous terms. So the analogous terms are terms that express meanings that are partly different and partly the same, or meanings that are related. So, analogy by proportion could be a term is applied to unlike objects because of some resemblance between them. For example, again, I use the term foot. So, term foot, univocally, if I define it, it means lower part of the body. But I can also use the term foot to refer to the foot of the mountain, the foot of the stairs, or the foot of the chair, or foot of the table. Meaning, it has some resemblance to the real, actual foot. They are in the lower part of something. So the foot of the mountain, by analogy, the term foot is used by analogy. Because the mountain does not really have a foot except the body, the human body or the body of the animal. But since the foot of the mountain is similarly situated to the foot of the human body, it is also used to refer to the lower part of the mountain, like the case of the foot of the stairs, because of the resemblance in position or location in relation to the whole object. Okay, that's the first meaning of analogy or analogous. So, when you say analogous, terms are not used in their literal sense. They are not used in their literal sense. So, idioms or idiomatic expressions and metaphors, they fall under this category. Okay, so examples again. The apple of one's eyes. So the term apple here is used analogously. It's not apple as the fruit, okay, or gadget. Okay? By analogy, apple, because the fruit apple is considered to be a favorite fruit. So when somebody is called the apple of one's eyes, meaning that would be his or her favorite person. Raining cats and dogs. Don't take this literally. This is it's a metaphor or an idiomatic expression, no, to describe a particular type of rain that it's raining very heavily. Broken heart. What is a broken heart? It's not really a broken or a broken heart literally, because if you have a broken heart, you will die. Okay, so broken heart is simply means well that a person is sad. So it's a metaphor. Make my day. Yeah, that should not be interpreted literally. Okay? So the next kind of analogy is by attribution. That is when we use a term in an absolute sense and then attribute it in a different term in some sense. Example here. Healthy could be attributed to medicine, body, exercise, food. As when we say healthy body, healthy exercise, healthy food. But when you look at the body, the food, and the exercise, they're all different. But they share something in common. They have a common attribute. Okay? They are healthy, meaning they provide something good for the body. Okay? So that's analogy by attribution. Again, the word beautiful. We can attribute beauty to beautiful body, beautiful house, beautiful movie, beautiful face, beautiful car, beautiful painting. But when you look at the body, the house, the movie, face, painting, car, they're all different. But they share one thing in common. They are all pleasing to the eyes. They are pleasing to see. But the beauty of a body is definitely different from the beauty of a house. Or the beauty of a movie is different from the beauty of a face. They're all different, but they are the same because they share something in common. That's the meaning of analogy or analogous. So here, some of the terms that are underlined are used analogously. I hurt my foot at the foot of the stairs. So I'm using the term foot here analogously. The other foot is, of course, univocal because that means the real foot. Logic is a tool for correct reasoning. So tool here is used as analogies. The dean is the head of the college. So this is analogous. At the same time, the head of his family. So the two terms head are used analogously because they don't have the same meaning, head of the college, head of the family. Okay? But they're not totally different because they're all both occupy the higher position. Okay? So those are the kinds of terms according to comprehension. Next is application, and there are four, and this is just very easy. A singular term applies to only one individual. Okay, singular. Of course, you have studied this in your English grammar. So what could be a singular term? A proper noun, a name of a person, or a name of an institution, or a name of a place. Benigno Aquino, University of Santo Tomas, St. Thomas Aquinas. Okay, so that's a singular term. A term prefixed by a demonstrative pronoun, like for example, that man or this book. So that man, this book, this place, that camera, this camera, singular term. Okay? Or a term with restrictive qualification. Like for example, the first president of the Philippine Republic. That's a qualification that applies to only one person, one individual. Or the dean of the college, there's only one. Okay? So there are singular. Now, the subjects of the following propositions are singular. Most valuable player tournament is my cousin. So there's only one. Triangle has three sides and three angles. So triangle is a singular term. Jupiter, the biggest planet in the solar system. So these are all singular terms. There's only one. Okay. The second is the universal term. So it's a term that is applied to all individuals or objects in a class or to the class itself. So it expresses a universal idea and usually prefixed by terms like all, every, no, each, and none. So when you see these terms prefixing a subject, then that means the subject is a universal term. So it applies to all. Okay, so for example here, all Catholics are Christians. So all Catholics, that's a subject. This is a universal term. Every wage earner. So this one here is a universal subject. Squares are polygons. Now look, here there is also, you know already that this is universal because of this prefix. Every is a prefix, so you know that this is universal. But what about here? Squares are polygons. There's no quantity. Quantity is all or every. But when you look at this concept or these terms, squares are polygons, will there be any squares that are not polygons? Is there any squares that is not a polygon? Is still there?
No.
None,
No, sir.
right? So even if you don't include or add all or every, this subject is a universal subject. So you just have to ask, is there any square that is not included in the predicate polygon? None. Then that means this is a universal. Okay. Now let's go to the next. It's a particular term and it applies to a part of the extension of the universal. So it could range between one and all, meaning it's not one and it's not all. So in between, indefinite, it could be many, it could be few, it could be several, it could be the majority. So as long as it is not one and not all, it's particular. Okay? And usually we have these prefixes. Some, few, many, several, most, majority. They indicate that the subject is particular. Okay, so examples here. Some soldiers. So when you see the some, it means the subject is particular. Few workers, particular. Majority of investors, particular. Now, how about here? Engineers are contractors. There's no few, some, majority. But again, you just have to ask, is there any engineer who is not a contractor? Is there an engineer who is not a contractor?
Yes, sir.
Yes. If there is an engineer who is not a contractor, that means the subject engineer is not a universal because there are other engineers who are not contractors. That means this only means some engineer, and therefore this is a particular term. Okay? Businessmen are professionals. Are there businessmen who are not professionals? Answer. Are there businessmen who are not professionals? Are there? Are there businessmen who are not professionals? Are all businessmen professional? Still there? There are businessmen who are not professionals, right? So this is just a particular term. Those who oppose the bill are that's government, anti-government. Is there anyone who is opposed to the bill who is not anti-government? There are people who are opposed to any bill, but they are not anti-government. That means this is a particular term. Okay? And lastly, the collective. The collective expresses a collective idea or a class or a group. And normally, it appears to be a singular term, but it represents a class or collective. So, for example, family, team, organization. Okay, so when you say if the family went on a vacation to Cebu, family is collective, or a herd of cows, collective, or an organization or an association or a school, collective, right? But sorry, if you put a quantifier here, you say some families, then some families becomes particular. If you say all families, then it becomes universal. So those are the types of terms based on extension and comprehension.